So animal behaviors that aid in survivorship, that's our CLC group.
Okay, so our introduction here is what we're going to be talking about in our PowerPoint. And to begin with, we're going to talk about animal behaviors and a few examples, and then I'll talk about proximation and ultimate causation, along with pheromones that influence behaviors, and then other behaviors that are influenced through learning and experience, and then a balancing of risk and reward, and then also some influence on mating systems and parental control. So a question is, what are animal behaviors? And a basic example of that is, are any actions or responses that animal does in reaction to a stimulus? So someone's basic stimuli that are included is like a change in temperature. And what they would react to is going somewhere warmer if they're cold, and then sound, smell, and sight. So if animal like sees or smells prey, that they will behave in an action to go towards that prey and go get it. And then some other just basic examples of behaviors are vocalization, communication. So communicating with other animals, running away from potential prey, hibernation, and eating. And we'll get into more specific examples soon. So the importance of animal behaviors. Um, these play a critical role in biological adaptations. So there are also internal and external stimuli that prompt these behaviors. So an example would be an external environmental threat that could trigger a genetic response that the animal would do to avoid danger. And then genetic instinct allows animals to survive and learn how to live in their environments with the given traits that they have. So some more specific examples of animal behavior are communication, and then this is how animals share information with each other, and then they can work together to find food and avoid prey. Instinct behaviors are just their basic um, behaviors that are given without prior knowledge and behavior learning. So, for example, um, new sorry, babies like nursing with their mother. And then they can also have territorial behaviors, as in spraying territory and defense mechanisms to keep other animals away from their territory or their nests. And now we're going to get into approximation and ultimate causation. So the difference between these are proximation or proximate causation is the immediate cause of behavior, and it can be hormonal, neurological, cognitive, any of those can trigger that. And some questions that we ask is, how is that happening, or what is that reason for that happening? And then, so ultimate causation is the reasons why something happens and the evolutionary significance of that behavior. So why is the why is that behavior causing that animal to reproduce and survive?
All right, so for the fixed action pattern, this is a pattern in which animals use as their innate behavioral mechanism, which results from a response to a stimulus. And the fixed action pattern can be described as unchanged or unchangeable due to the initiation of a stimulus being activated and then carried out until it's completed. And the sign stimulus, this is important. This is basically like the stimulus that influences the fixed action pattern. And to the right, I have an image of two male stickleback fish, and they were placed in the same tank. So when a stickleback fish invades another space, the sticklebacks produce an aggressive behavior, which is the action pattern. And this could be studied as the sticklebacks producing the aggressive behavior as the vision or stimulus of seeing a male red belly is a sign of intrusion initiating the action pattern. And migration and the influence of biological rhythms on animal behavior. Now, migration, we all know, is a change in location or relocation. and species use this through different times of the year or pretty frequently. So animals use this circadian clock to navigate their ways through new encounters and migrations. And the circadian clock uses a 24-hour delay period internally to adjust. And an example could be like nocturnal animals using a North Star to navigate their positioning, where other animals can use the sun, moon, or Earth's magnetic field as needed during like daytime or nighttime, depending on when they're most active. And then the circadian clock can be responsible for the rest and activity cycles or hibernation. And another rhythm, which is the cranial rhythms or annual rhythms. These are like seasonal activities and reproductions that are controlled. And an example could be timing of a new or full moon that can influence reproduction. And the biggest difference between these two is the circadian clock, which is a 24-hour. That's more like daily activity and more like rest and activity, where circadian rhythms are reproduction a lot in like a lot longer processes or cycles. The four modes of animal communication, these are the visual, chemical, and tactile, and auditory. These modes are pretty self-explanatory. With visual, it uses visions to detect a stimulus and observation of another species. Chemical uses scent or hormones being released to detect a stimulus. Tactile is a method of touch to detect the stimulus. Auditory is the sense of hearing to detect the stimulus. Animal communication can vary in species, lifestyles, or the environment they take place in. And some examples of these I found were bees that use a waggle dance to communicate to other bees the distance and direction of food source or nectar. And flies can use this as well. And an example could be like one fly using their visual to see the encounter of another, and chemical by the chemical hormones or scent they give off. And tactile could be how they're touching in the image right there. And auditory, a lot of flies, when they can use a vibration of their wing to create a song for one another.
Then we have pheromones influencing animal behavior. So what pheromones are is chemicals that are produced and released by a certain species, and they affect other animals in that same species through their physiology and their behavior. And the main purpose for pheromones is to help the animals mate and reproduce, as well as be able to interact with each other, and also to be able to find food. And it is most commonly used for them to be able to mark their territory and let other species know. And the way that they're released is mainly by biological secretions, such as through urine, feces, or saliva. And then how behavior is influenced is mainly through learning and experience. So the first one is through imprinting, and this is usually done when animals are first born. So they form a connection with the first person or object they see. As you can see in this picture, we have the young who have imprinted on their mother, which is why you usually see the mother being followed by her young without knowing why. They're just following them because they have imprinted on them. And they usually imprint on the mothers, and it occurs during the sensitive period in their development. So mainly whenever they are hatched from the shell. And if they are unable to imprint with the parent, the animal may be unable to survive on their own. Then we have spatial learning, which is learning through the experience of visualizing their spatial structures in their environment. And they do this to find their habitat or home. Then they have a cognitive map, which helps them represent the spatial relationships between the objects around their environment that surround them. And through the recognition of the spatial structures, they are able to find their home and find food as well. And then they also have associative learning, and animals are able to associate something in their environment with another. So let's say an animal eats something and they dislike it, they'll try to stay away from things that look similar or taste similar to it. Then they have cognition, which makes them aware of their surroundings and helps them have reasoning and recollection, as well as judgment when making decisions. Then they have problem solving, which is able to help animals create strategies to overcome obstacles, such as finding new ways to find food for themselves. Then there's social learning, where they watch others from their own culture or from different cultures to form their way of living. And then the learned behaviors that they develop is mainly learned throughout their beginning years, which is called the sensitive period in their development. And then we have the optimal foraging model, thus the balancing risk and reward. So this is whenever animals are thinking about finding food. So the optimal foraging model states that the foraging behavior is seen more as a compromise between the benefits of eating and the costs of what it would take in order to get the food. So the cost of obtaining food would be like looking at the energy, how much energy it would take them to travel to get the food, and what are the risks of being eaten while searching for food. And then the balancing of risk and reward is they rather have a small reward because there's basically no risk. And if there's a large reward, then there's a greater risk of them being hunted or killed. And then we have how their mating systems and parental care influence their mating behavior. So if animals stay with their mate and take care of their young, they have a higher chance of reproducing successfully. And this is called monogamy. And then animals can also maximize their reproducing rate by mating with other animals instead of just staying with the same one their entire lives. And this is called polygamy. And in order for animals to reproduce successfully, depending on their species, it is beneficial to either do one or both of them. So if they stay with their mates for a long time, it's an example would be with penguins. And then for the polygamy, an example would be with chickens, how they have different mates. And then if both parents take care of their young, this is called internal fertilization. But when the mother only takes care of the young, it's called external fertilization.
So mate selection is actually very different depending on animal and their species. Many animals have their own unique way of choosing their mate. And one of the many ways is an animal can go off of appearance or ornamentation, such as the peacock, where it has its bright colors to attract its mate. Another more violent way for mates to find each other are when males usually go toe to toe with each other, such as lions, kangaroos, or gorillas, and they fight each other over their mate. More peaceful ways that many people find their mates are through songs or pheromones that are released. This is usually common among birds and insects. And when it comes to their courtships, it tends to be that are the ones that aren't the males are the ones producing the courtships while the females really get to choose their potential mate accordingly. Game theory. Game theory is a way for people can it's a way that people can study and learn different things. It's more of a situational concept that can affect more than just animals. It's actually a very complicated concept, but in order for game theory to work, it's pretty much how one person's actions, also along with other people's reactions, create a more complicated answer that wasn't really perceived in the beginning. An example of this can really be arise from the territory of food service defense, and the success of an animal's chosen strategy really depends on the strategies of others. So everything that happens is affected by others' actions, as you can see with the bats. And then evolutionary behavior. Evolutionary behavior comes from the better fit individuals that survive in certain environments, with the idea of natural selection being the animal's most adaptive and suited for an environment survival, which create evolutionary behaviors that are called or that are carried on to the offspring generations in order to continue the survival of the species. Humans can be used to show evolutionary behavior, as many humans' behaviors are believed to be influenced by physical and psychological predispositions that have helped humans survive throughout the years.
All right, and then there are our references.
So do you want to double check while we're all